The day had started like any other sweltering summer afternoon, the kind where the heat clung to the skin like a heavy blanket and the air shimmered above the cracked asphalt. Sarah's sandals slapped softly against the ground as she trudged down the quiet road toward her small town's grocery store. The sun blazed overhead, its relentless rays forcing beads of sweat to gather on her forehead. Even her throat felt parched, the dryness making each swallow scratchy and uncomfortable. She unscrewed the cap of her water bottle and took a sip, but before she could raise it to her lips again, something stopped her in her tracks. It wasn't a sound most people would have noticed, faint, barely there, almost swallowed by the stillness of the afternoon. But Sarah's ears caught it, a weak, desperate whimper. She froze, scanning the area. The road was empty except for a few swaying tufts of grass and a lonely, abandoned gas station sitting like a relic of another time on the corner. Its windows were dusty, the paint on the sign peeling, and the ground around it littered with weeds pushing stubbornly through the concrete. The whimper came again, this time a little more urgent. Sarah's chest tightened. Without fully thinking about it, she veered off the road and stepped cautiously toward the source of the sound. As she approached the gas station, the air seemed heavier, the heat more oppressive. She moved past a rusted metal sign leaning at an awkward angle, her sandals crunching over shards of broken glass. The sound was coming from behind the building, somewhere near the chain-link fence that bordered a patch of dry, overgrown land. Rounding the corner, she saw him, and her breath caught in her throat. The German shepherd lay half-collapsed against the fence, his body motionless except for the faint rise and fall of his ribcage. His fur, which must have once been sleek and proud, was now tangled and matted with dirt. Dust clung to his muzzle, and his eyes were dull, glazed over with exhaustion. His tongue lolled out of his mouth, dry and cracked, and Sarah could see how his sides heaved with every breath, as though even that small movement required immense effort. For a moment, Sarah just stood there, stunned. She had seen strays before, plenty of them wandered the outskirts of town, but there was something different about this one. Something about the way he looked at her, weak but pleading, made her heart ache in a way she couldn't explain. She felt the weight of the water bottle in her hand, still half full, and instantly knew what she had to do. "Hey," she whispered softly, crouching down a few feet away. Her voice was gentle, careful not to startle him. His ears twitched slightly, and his eyes flickered toward her, though he didn't move. "It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you." Slowly, she inched forward, the hot asphalt pressing against her knees as she knelt in front of him. She unscrewed the cap of her bottle and tilted it so the cool water trickled down toward his mouth. At first, he didn't react, just stared at the water as if unsure whether it was real. Then, with a weak shift of his head, he began to lap at it, the movements clumsy but desperate. The sound of his tongue hitting the water was faint but urgent, and Sarah felt a swell of relief. She let him drink until the bottle was empty, every drop disappearing as though it had been waiting just for him. With each gulp, his eyes seemed to regain the smallest spark of life, and when he finally lifted his head, he looked at her in a way that made her chest tighten, a mixture of gratitude and vulnerability. "There you go, boy," she murmured, her voice almost breaking. "You're going to be okay." The German shepherd tried to stand but stumbled, his legs trembling as if the effort was too much. Without thinking, Sarah slid her arm under his chest, steadying him. He leaned into her touch, his weight heavy against her side. She could feel the warmth of his body through her clothes, the faint but steady beat of his heart. She glanced back toward the road. The heat was shimmering in waves, and her small house was nearly a mile away. Carrying him wasn't an option, he was far too big for that, but leaving him here was unthinkable. "Come with me," she said softly, her words almost a plea. "You're safe now." The dog seemed to understand. With a shuddering breath, he took a tentative step forward, then another, his head dipping slightly as if to conserve his strength. Sarah walked beside him, one hand resting gently on his side to steady him. They moved slowly, the world around them almost eerily quiet except for the sound of their footsteps and his faint panting. As they made their way back toward town, Sarah couldn't shake the strange feeling that this moment, finding him here, helping him, wasn't random. It was as if something had drawn her down that road, something beyond coincidence. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't let him out of her sight now. By the time they reached the edge of her yard, the German Shepherd's steps were stronger, though his body still trembled from fatigue. Sarah led him to the shade of a large oak tree, where she filled a bowl with fresh water and set it in front of him. He drank greedily again, then lay down in the cool grass, his eyes never leaving her. She crouched beside him, brushing a bit of dirt from his fur. "We'll get you cleaned up," she promised, her tone both gentle and determined. "We'll get you healthy again." In that moment, she didn't realize how much she was promising, not just his recovery, but her own silent commitment to protect him, no matter what. She didn't know that by saving his life, she was about to change her own forever. And she certainly didn't know that this dog's past, still hidden in shadows, would come crashing into her future in a way that would leave her shaken to her core. Right now, all she saw was a life she had pulled back from the edge. Right now, all that mattered was that he was alive. The first night Sarah brought the German Shepherd home, she couldn't stop checking on him. Every few hours, she'd peek into the small corner of her living room where she had laid down an old blanket for him. He was curled up tightly, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, but each time she approached, his eyes would open, watching her quietly before slipping shut again. She had named him Rex. Something about the name felt strong, protective, and fitting for the way he had leaned against her on the walk home, as if trusting her completely. Over the next few days, Rex transformed. The dullness in his eyes faded, replaced by an alert sharpness. His body regained some of its strength, and his gait became smoother. He began following Sarah everywhere, almost like a shadow. When she made breakfast, he lay at her feet. When she sat on the couch to read, he rested his head on her knee. Even when she went to the bathroom, he waited outside the door, his tail thumping faintly whenever she emerged. At first, she found it endearing. She chalked it up to his fear of being left alone after whatever ordeal he had been through. But as the days passed, Sarah began to notice something different in his behavior, something sharper, more deliberate. He wasn't just sticking close to her for comfort. He was watching, always watching. His eyes would shift toward the windows, his ears pricking at faint noises she barely noticed. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she would hear him moving quietly from one window to another, his nails clicking lightly against the wooden floor. It was a Wednesday evening when she first saw it, Rex's protective instincts turning into something almost unsettling. She was stirring a pot of pasta when Rex suddenly stiffened beside her. His body went rigid, ears standing straight, eyes locked toward the front window. Without warning, he darted to the door and let out a deep, commanding bark that seemed far too powerful for the quiet space of her kitchen. Startled, Sarah dropped the spoon. "Rex, what's wrong?" He didn't glance at her. His attention was fixed outside, each bark echoing with a sense of urgency. Sarah's heart rate quickened. She stepped to the window, pushing the curtain aside, but saw nothing except the fading light of dusk painting the empty street. No people, no cars, no movement, probably just a raccoon, she muttered, more to calm herself than him. But Rex didn't relax. He stayed by the door for nearly 20 minutes, his tail low, body tense, growling in a low, rumbling tone she'd never heard from him before. The next night, it happened again. She was washing dishes when he froze in place, staring toward the back of the house. His ears twitched, his eyes locked on something she couldn't see. This time, the growl came first, low and steady, before he padded toward the back door and stood there, muscles taut. Sarah followed, but again, nothing. Just the soft rustle of leaves in the wind and the distant hum of traffic on the main road. By the third night, the unease had started to sink in. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Rex wasn't reacting to shadows or harmless animals. He was reacting to something real, something she couldn't detect. The first true confirmation came on a bright, cloudless afternoon a few days later. Sarah decided to take Rex for a walk down a quiet trail near the edge of the woods. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, the air heavy with the scent of pine and warm earth. Rex trotted happily beside her at first, his tail wagging lazily. But as they reached a bend in the path, he froze mid-step. His head shot up, ears pointing forward, eyes narrowing at something just ahead. Before Sarah could react, he bolted. "Rex," she called, her voice sharp with panic as she ran after him. Branches whipped against her arms as she struggled to keep up. She rounded the bend and saw him, standing rigid in front of a man she had never seen before. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing that didn't match the sunny afternoon. His hands were shoved into his pockets, and he was watching her with a strange stillness, almost as if he had been waiting. Rex's bark exploded through the air, loud and unrelenting. His hackles rose, teeth bared in a way Sarah had never seen before. The man's eyes flickered from Rex to Sarah, then, without a word, he turned sharply and disappeared into the trees. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, her pulse pounding in her ears. She looked down at Rex, who was still barking, his body angled protectively in front of her. She grabbed his collar, her voice shaking. Okay, boy, let's go." They didn't walk home, they practically ran. Her mind spun with questions the entire way. Who was that man? Why had he been standing there, in such an isolated spot? And why had Rex reacted like that, as though recognizing a threat? That night, Sarah sat in her living room with every light on, Rex lying at her feet, still unusually alert. She thought back to all the times he had barked at nothing, all the moments he had stiffened in the shadows of her home. He hadn't been overreacting, he hadn't been paranoid, he had been warning her. But warning her about what? Or, about who? She looked down at Rex, her fingers brushing through his thick fur. He met her gaze, eyes steady and unblinking, as if he knew the truth but couldn't tell her. And for the first time since she had brought him home, Sarah felt a faint shiver of fear, not of Rex, but of whatever had put that watchful, determined look in his eyes. She had saved him from thirst, from whatever had left him alone and suffering. But now, as the shadows deepened outside and the night crept in, she began to wonder if Rex had been brought into her life for a reason, one that had nothing to do with luck, and everything to do with danger she couldn't yet see. And deep down, she suspected that danger was getting closer. Sleep was impossible that night. Sarah lay in bed, the faint hum of her ceiling fan doing nothing to quiet the storm in her head. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man from the woods, his stillness, the way he had stared at her as if memorizing her face. And every time, Rex's deep, furious bark echoed in her mind, a sound that seemed to come from a place far beyond ordinary dog behavior. By morning, her restlessness had hardened into a need for answers. She couldn't live with the constant uncertainty, with every shadow outside her window feeling like it might hold someone watching her. Rex had been acting on instinct, no, more than instinct. He'd been acting like a dog trained for something specific, and that thought alone made her heart race. She decided to go back to where it had all begun, the abandoned gas station. Maybe it was foolish, maybe even dangerous, but she felt pulled there, as though the place still held pieces of the puzzle she hadn't seen. Rex trotted beside her, his stride strong and purposeful, as if he too knew they were going somewhere important. When they arrived, the place looked exactly as it had before, empty, sun-bleached, and silent. The chain-link fence stood crooked, weeds curling up around its base. Sarah walked toward the spot where she had first seen him, the image of his collapsed body flashing vividly in her mind. That's when she saw it, something glinting faintly in the dirt near the fence. She crouched down, brushing away dry soil with her fingertips until her hand closed around a small metal object. Lifting it into the light, she realized it was a tag, heavy, solid, and not like the simple ID tags sold at pet stores. This one was engraved with a symbol and a set of numbers. Her stomach flipped as she turned it over. On the back, in clean block letters, was a name, Rex. Beneath it, an identification number, and just above, 2 letters that sent a chill through her, K9. She stared at it for several seconds, her mind struggling to connect the dots. K-9 units were police dogs, trained to track, protect, and even apprehend suspects. Could Rex have been one of them? It would explain so much. His heightened awareness, his unshakable focus, the way he guarded her without hesitation. Her hands trembled as she slipped the tag into her pocket and headed home. Once there, she sat down at her kitchen table, pulled out her phone, and began searching. It didn't take long. A few keystrokes in the right words, K-9 Rex police dog, brought up a local news article dated 8 months earlier. She clicked on it, and her breath caught as she read. The headline was simple: K-9 officer missing after handler attacked. The article detailed how a police dog named Rex, part of a unit investigating a series of violent home invasions, had gone missing during an operation. His handler had been ambushed by an unknown assailant. Though the officer survived, Rex had vanished, presumed either stolen or dead. Authorities had suspected that whoever was behind the invasions might have targeted Rex specifically to remove a threat. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her pulse thundering in her ears. It all made sense. Now, his watchful behavior, his immediate recognition of danger, the man in the woods. Whoever had attacked his handler might still be out there. And if Rex had found her, maybe it wasn't by accident. Maybe the people behind those crimes knew he wasn't gone after all. A sound outside jolted her from her thoughts, a faint rustle near the front of the house. Rex's head snapped up instantly, his body stiffening. He moved to the window with slow, deliberate steps, his gaze locked on something beyond the glass. Sarah followed, peering out just in time to catch the faintest movement, a shadow slipping past the edge of her yard. Her throat tightened. Someone was there, watching. Rex growled low, a deep vibration she felt in her bones. For the first time, Sarah didn't just feel fear, she felt a spark of something else, determination. She grabbed her phone with one hand, her other resting on Rex's back. She dialed the non-emergency line for the police, explaining in a low voice what she had found, what she had seen. The dispatcher's tone sharpened when she mentioned Rex's name and the tag number. "Stay inside," the woman instructed. "We're sending someone over immediately. And, keep the dog close. He knows what he's doing." Those last words sent a strange wave of reassurance through her. She turned to Rex, meeting his steady gaze. He didn't look anxious or afraid, only focused. Ready. The next hour passed in tense silence. Sarah stayed by the window, Rex planted firmly beside her like a living wall. Outside, the shadows deepened as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The golden light faded into orange, then into the dark blue of evening. Somewhere in that dimming world, danger waited, but so did protection. Movement caught her eye again, closer this time. A figure stepped briefly into view near her fence line, their head turning as if scanning the house. Before she could react, Rex lunged forward, barking with such force that the person froze, then stumbled back into the shadows. Sarah's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. Not this time. She kept her eyes on the spot where the figure had disappeared, her hand never leaving Rex's fur. In that moment, she realized the truth. She hadn't just saved Rex's life that day by the gas station. She had gained something much bigger, a guardian who had once served the law, a protector who knew exactly how to face danger head-on. And whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. She leaned down slightly, her voice a quiet promise. "Let them come, Rex," she whispered. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." The dog's ears twitched at her words, but his gaze never left the darkness outside. His growl rumbled again, steady and sure, as though agreeing with her. And deep inside, Sarah understood that fate hadn't simply led her to a thirsty, broken dog. It had brought her the one ally she would need most in the days ahead, because this wasn't over. Not yet. The real fight had only just begun.